Let's bring in Spanish football expert Rory Barlow. Rory, great to have you on. Thanks as always for your time. Lots to talk about over the last few weeks regarding Vinny Jr., about potentially joining Arsenal. How realistic was that ever, did you feel? And did those rumours play a factor into this new contract? What do you say?
Yeah, I think there was always a little bit of skepticism on the part of people kind of observing this transfer from afar, because I don't think many people could really picture Vinicius signing for Arsenal when he's publicly spoken so highly of Real Madrid at every opportunity. He said publicly that I want to stay. And this has been a saga that's been ongoing for the last 2 years. So although there was obviously a possibility, Real Madrid have shown in the past that they have a strong and firm hand with their star players. They're willing to let them go if they don't accept the right terms. I felt like it was always likely that Vinicius was going to stay at Real Madrid because I don't think he ever wanted to leave in reality.
Tell us more about him as a person. What's he really like? And is he now going to really fuel Real Madrid getting back to the very summit of the Spanish game and, of course, Europe as well?
Yeah, Vinicius Jr. is obviously a complex character. He arrived in Spain as an 18-year-old. He's faced difficulties during his time at Real Madrid. Of course, we're all aware of kind of the racial abuse that he suffered over the years in Spanish football. And off the pitch, I think many players kind of speak very highly of him as a very nice guy, as somebody that's very easygoing, relaxed. And yet at the same time, there's obviously this kind of defiant side to him, this side to him that wants to kind of challenge and really take it to the kind of naysayers in the game. And you kind of see that in his game, in the way that he plays as well. He's very kind of aggressive in the way that he attacks the ball. But in terms of kind of what this does for Real Madrid, I think it secures them one of the best players in the world. Let's make no bones about that. On his day, one of the best wingers in the world. But ultimately, for José Mourinho, the question coming in a few months' time is the one that's been devouring managers in its path. And is that, how can you get the best out of Vinicius and Mbappe at the same time? Because so far, 3 managers have failed to do it.
That is the question, getting those two to fire on all cylinders at the same time for the same team. Meantime, Los Blancos bringing in the teenage talents of Diomande from Leipzig, a mammoth fee that could get up to, nearing $150 million. For those not familiar with the Ivorian, is he worth the big bucks? And what can he bring to the team?
Yeah, Diomande is a very exciting player. I mean, he's one of those players that gets you up off your seat as you watch him play. He's one of those players that has tantalizing control of the ball. He can kind of glide past defenders at will. And it's a very exciting signing. I think it is sort of a bit of a strange situation because you've got, as you say, kind of potentially record-breaking transfer for Real Madrid, but without the same fanfare as certainly even Vinicius Jr. has had. If you look at Jude Bellingham, Hazard, you mentioned there, Mbappe, these transfers have all brought much more kind of attention to Real Madrid than this one. What I do find interesting is that for the first time in a long time, since kind of Gareth Bale was at the peak of his powers, we will see a Real Madrid front three that's more balanced with a kind of firm kind of star on the right-hand side probably. And that will help, I think, Vinicius and Mbappe, because at times we've seen that Real Madrid play kind of congeal on that left-hand side, and there's been not so much balance on the right flank. So Diomande should at least bring that. But yeah, it's been a bit of a strange one for what is potentially a record-breaking signing.
Gosh, this Real Madrid squad is just brimming with talent. So many options for José Mourinho. I know he's only just 19 years of age, Diomande, but who do we compare him to? Is there anyone out there that you would compare him to at this point in his career?
It's a good question. I think you could kind of look at the likes of kind of a Bukayo Saka or a winger that's kind of come into the game and is kind of most famed for their dribbling. Certainly a player that makes the difference in those one-on-one situations. Somebody that doesn't mind drifting inside a little bit, but obviously has that kind of eye for goal, that eye for assists as well. I think he's a very smooth player to watch on the ball, and that's probably the most exciting thing for Real Madrid players, because you've got those kind of explosive players in the likes of Mbappe and the likes of Vinicius, but Diomande is slightly different in his style of play, and hopefully that will gel with what they have already. But as I say, kind of less fanfare. It's a bit strange. Just kind of a year ago, he's playing for Leganés, who are kind of a team on the outskirts of Madrid. So to make that move for that kind of money, in the space of a year. He's not really had too much time at the top of the game. It's going to be interesting to see how he fares with the pressure at Real Madrid, of course.
Yeah, I wonder about you. Gosh, Rory, your insights are so good. I could talk to you for the whole half hour, but I do want to get in a couple more at least, if I may. I mentioned earlier, José Mourinho must be absolutely loving this. How much of the window has been directly influenced by him, do you feel? And how can he make it all work on the pitch? Because you can be sure the pressure's going to be on the special one to make it all work, right?
Yeah, you're tugging at the thread of what I think is the kind of story of Real Madrid's summer there, is that this is the biggest shift in spending that we've seen from Los Blancos in such a long time. I think since 2019, it's the most they've spent in transfer market. But in terms of kind of a revolution, in terms of the impact on their starting lineup, I would say this is the biggest spend or biggest transfer market we've seen from Real Madrid since 2009. That summer of Benzema, of Ronaldo, of Kaká. You're seeing kind of a real shift, because in the last few years, they've been quite austere with their squad, signing one or two stars, but generally packing out their team with kind of less heralded names. Now we've got kind of 6 signings. I think 3 or 4 of them at least will come into the starting lineup. And I think we're seeing a real shift towards more established players coming in. And I think Mourinho will have made that one of his demands as he kind of took the job, as he negotiated to come in. Because, yeah, in the past, in the last kind of 3-4 years, we've seen Ancelotti, Alonso, Arbeloa. They've not really had too much say over transfers. And now Mourinho does seem to have the kind of bull by the horn, so to speak.
Yeah, okay. So the big question then, as you well know, you live right there. The expectations are always massive, aren't they, in the Spanish capital? So with the bar so high now, Rory, what is going to constitute a successful season, do you feel, for Real? What is a minimum requirement for Mourinho and his team?
Yeah, it's Groundhog Day in a certain respect for Mourinho, in that the first and foremost, he needs to wrestle the La Liga title back from Barcelona. If he doesn't do that, he will come under serious pressure. But I think for Mourinho too, you will also kind of see that one of the things that he didn't manage to achieve at Real Madrid was to win a Champions League. So that will obviously be on his mind, and I think that would kind of be a way to kind of bow out from the top level, or to kind of put the cherry on top of his career. But yeah, the La Liga title is a must after 2 years without success. And I think, yeah, it'll be difficult for him to come in and obviously manage that dressing room. But he's got a fearsome opponent in Barcelona opposite him.
Oh, yeah. We saw when Ancelotti returned to the club as well. Expectations were perhaps not as high this time around, but he still went on to add many more pieces of silverware, including the biggest prizes of them all. Rory, thanks so much. Wishing you a great weekend. All the best to you and your family. Thank you.